Hi guys, how are you? So this is Prashant here. I think we're gonna begin in some time. So I hope you all can actually see my screen, right? So you could post all your questions and all your doubts here, and I'm gonna take a break in between to address all your doubts and all your queries, right? So we're gonna keep our topic strictly around Libra as a cryptocurrency, the need for Libra, and a bit about blockchain, right? And then we're going to go with the Q&A, right? So this is today's agenda, right? I'm going to talk about a quick introduction to Libra, and I'm sure like there are a lot of quite diversified people from different backgrounds, and I'm sure they must be knowing about blockchain and Libra blockchain and how it works. Talk about the Libra currency, the reserve, the association, and the conclusion. And most importantly, I would really like to go around from a perspective that why has been there's a need for Libra, right? So a quick background or introduction about myself. So I'm Prashant. I'm co-founder of Snapper and Indian Blockchain Institute. So Snapper has been primarily an enterprise blockchain company since 2015. I was awarded as one of the youngest #1 super achiever by Hindustan Times in 2019, and I have got over 10 years of entrepreneurship experience, starting from AI, now moving to blockchain. I have a good experience working with enterprise clients all around the world, from Fortune companies to startups and also a lot of governments. And our works have been covered by Harvard Business Review and Ivy League publications and a lot of other top universities and research publications on the blockchain space. So I'm aware, though a lot of you know about what blockchain is and all of that, I would just like to take a quick couple of minutes to introduce a bit more about blockchain to our participants who are actually quite new and might not be aware of this, right? So guys, basically, if you understand why do we need blockchain, right? If you understand, all the business ecosystem is actually quite complex in structures. So for example, if I have to take a small use case of a bank where a fund has to move from India to the US, right? There are so many multiple participants are actually involved. So there is a bank, there's a receiver's bank, there's a sender's bank, there's a master of account, and then you have a mid between some treasury department, and then you have a SWIFT, right, whose job is actually to maintain the records or to make sure or to check basically, the balances, checks, and the compliances are actually met. And most importantly, what SWIFT is actually doing is trying to build a bridge or trying to build a bridge of trust among multiple participants. And how it happens, right? It happens through matching or verification of data at both the sides and making sure that the trust or the integrity of the network is actually, or the data is actually maintained. So with we moving from internet or an internet world, the most of the assets, everything is all about data. So we are moving towards a world where data is as important as asset. We are actually moving data every single time whenever I talk about businesses and their assets, right? So right now, though they have ERPs and all of that, it still there works in silos. Like the parties A records or a party A's data is not connected with parties B and party C's and so on, right? One of the key factors why after having ERP and also with traditional technology is not connected, because one of the key challenges is data integrity and trust issues. And with blockchain, right, we are actually, it's a technology of trust where we are trying to bridge this gap of trust by creating a business network or by creating a uniform business network where all participants are actually sharing the same copy of a data. They all have access to the data in real time, and they're actually sharing the same book of truth or a book of records. And if any changes or anything has to be done, right, that is actually visible to all of the parties in an ecosystem. Now, you may have actually a doubt that what if about data privacy and data breaches, right? Well, not to worry about it, because all the data, whatever goes into the blockchain, goes into an encrypted format, and this is a process, we call it actually hashing. So which means that the original owner of the record would have all the data rights with whom the data should be shared, and is completely visible if anyone has modified the data or if anybody has kind of viewed the data. So this is actually completely governed by rules and regulations, which is actually set by all the participants in an ecosystem. So this way, since we are using hashing, which means all the data is actually getting into the system in an encryption format, which is like a lock and key. And as the terminology suggests, like blockchain, right? Every blocks of data, or every time a data is actually pushed into the system, it's actually kind of creating a chain reaction, or a systematic data record, or a data set, which is actually contains, or every block or every data actually contains the reference of all previous data and all the previous records. So this property of blockchain, which is purely around data computing, data reconciliation, security, and most importantly, basically automation, right? So automation, I'm talking about a way where we have something called smart contracts, right? So with smart contracts, all the parameters of a contract would be executed without any middlemen. Like for example, the use case which we are going to discuss about today, Libra, it is going to actually perhaps would question whether do we need banks or not, whether do we need Swift or not, because it's purely a peer-to-peer banking system, which is actually without any banks, without any third parties, and without any intermediaries. And this kind of a system, or a peer-to-peer network, has like tremendous advantages, because it is going to solve the trust issues in a much massive way. And most importantly, it is going to create an internet of decentralization. So we have seen with so many data breaches which already has been happening, something recently with Zoom, right? I mean, Zoom was apparently hacked, and all the data was actually kind of leaked. In a similar scenario, we have a lot of other data breaches with Cambridge Analytica. We have a lot of other issues with a lot of other hacks, like enterprises, companies. Everybody gets hacked in day out, and almost every Fortune company in the world has suffered one or the form of the other, or the other data breaches, right? And all of these issues could be bridged actually using blockchain. So hence blockchain would play a very important role in connecting different ERPs, different ecosystems, different databases, and most importantly, making sure that all this is happening in a secured environment. Hence we use actually blockchain. So as I told you, right, blockchain is a technology of trust, where all the parties are actually sharing the same copy of record and the same copy of a data, and whatever transaction is actually being done to the system, every you could determine whether it should be made public, or whether it is quite a confidential information, and all of that. So you could determine with whom this data has to be shared in real time. This way you are actually not only kind of creating a system of trust, but also you are actually operating several nodes. So in this scenario, or in a traditional scenario, right, if I have to move money from point A, or from bank A to bank B, if Swift or if any of the participants are actually down, this entire process would get affected. I mean, it could actually come to a halt, because only of a fact that, I mean, Swift or any party does not have any other bridge to build this trust. Since blockchain operates purely on a peer-to-peer distributed system, right? If any of the participants, even in this entire ecosystem, is down, one would always be able to access the data from its other participants. So think this, like something like a BitTorrent or a uTorrent, right? Even if you have a limited bandwidth, since it's a peer-to-peer network with more seeders and leechers, you could actually download data pretty fast. So this is going to be a massive scalable solution to all the issues what internet of today is facing. So essentially with blockchain, right, currently what we are in is, I would say, web 2.0, which is internet of information, right? We are actually using internet more from information purposes, more for sharing purposes, right? But with blockchain, we are moving towards purely a new internet of value, where we are exchanging value in the form of data, where data is actually used as an oil to power this internet ecosystem. So similarly, even if I have to define, right, what are cryptocurrencies? Cryptocurrencies are basically a peer-to-peer or an independent form of money, right? So anyone on the blockchain network could actually create their own cryptocurrencies, which can be used by the people who actually trust this system. So with blockchain, right, one can not only actually, and it has given the power to the people to not only to create their own money based on their beliefs, but also to create a business network, or to create a network which is actually defined by certain rules and regulations, which we actually call consensus. And the entire integrity of this network is actually supported by the people who believe in it, or the participants who actually believe in it. And you could also actually automate the entire contractual processes using smart contracts. You could track assets. So you could typically track how your money is actually moving. So with cryptocurrencies, right, if I move money from A to B, B to C, C to D, E, F, etc., so on and so forth, the complete ledger or the complete transaction history is available to everyone. Of course, it is an encrypted manner to hide the identity, but you could always check the kind of or a number of transactions every individual has performed. Hence, it becomes actually, quite easy in terms of, transparency to actually move. But at the same time, it has created a system where, people all around the world would actually, never have to kind of, worry about, when moving money from, A to B and A to B, and don't have to actually depend on, middlemen to actually do that. So that is nutshell cryptocurrencies, right? It's a peer-to-peer money which is independent or which is not controlled by any participant, but the network and the people who actually support itself. So it is for the community and by the community, right? Hence, to summarize, what blockchain offers is basically a connected ecosystem, because all the participants are connected and sharing the same copy of a data, resulting in higher efficiency, transparency, and with smart contracts, we don't need to rely on middlemen like, say, middlemen like Swift, middlemen like brokers, middlemen like lawyers, whose job is actually to verify the contract, right? If you go back to Google or if you look at some of the stats, it's astonishing, right? Even after having so much advancement in terms of technologies or in terms of processes, the kind of insurance frauds happen all across the globe is in actually hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So with blockchain, you could actually typically, think of a scenario where you could actually track the end-to-end movement of a data and actually can come to a conclusion in real time purely by verifying a data. So, some lot of frauds which is actually related to money, right? Recently we saw a fraud of Nirav Modi's fraud, right? I mean, where fake letter of credits was issued by a bank itself. So imagine if it was on the blockchain, right? These checks and balances would be performed by the system itself, and they don't have to actually rely on one particular party to establish trust. And the data is actually moving in terms of consensus, so which means there is a rules and a regulation which is defined and also agreed by all the participants in an ecosystem. The most important thing about blockchain is that the data immutability, right? So whatever data is actually entered into the system, it cannot be modified or altered. So you might think, hey Prashant, like what if I have to modify the data, right? So basically blockchain, right, we are actually taking the reference of that data to create a new or a modified data. So which means that the entire trail of data is also, or the changes is also visible to all the participants in an ecosystem. And hence it's a distributed ledger technology, which is thus serving as a single source of truth, right? So typically you could think of, actually using blockchain where you have across diversified use cases where you have multiple participants, where data is, or the integrity of a data is utmost important, where security is important, and also you want to automate the entire process. So at Snapper, we have worked on quite diversified, blockchain solutions ranging from e-governance to complex supply chain, banking, and also healthcare. So now coming to Libra. So before we move to Libra, right, I would like to know if you guys have certain doubts or certain queries, so I could kind of, kind of clarify it, right? Okay, so there's a question from Arindam that, can you explain about the network where blockchain operates? Okay, so, Arindam, as I told you that typically you could use blockchain across multiple scenarios where you have multiple participants in an ecosystem, where the trust is of utmost challenge, and also you want to get or leverage smart contracts to kind of automate the process. And most importantly, right, when you want to actually connect multiple systems, multiple databases or multiple ERPs, and also want to make sure that there is no trust and the integrity issue. So across for all of these use cases or for all of these scenarios, you could actually think of using a blockchain. And Libra is, one of the most amazing blockchain examples of where, Libra is actually looking forward to introduce a simple global currency or a financial infrastructure, which is, empowered billions of people all around the world. So Libra using blockchain is actually changing the way money moves from all around the world, and it's creating actually a pool of state basket currencies, which is stored in different bank accounts, and which is when you just need one Libra to actually operate. So Libra's vision and the mission is actually much beyond the banking, right? So Libra actually wants to onboard several people all around the world who don't have access to the financial system, right? I mean, imagine, why would a bank would like to go in a village in India where people don't have any spending capacity and help them to operate account? Because of course, if you have to kind of open accounts and all of that, there's a lot of cost involved. There is a lot of infrastructure cost, operational cost, and so on and so forth. So all this data is actually taken from the Libra's website. So you could just go there and just can get access to all this data. So the typical pain point or a problem statement what Libra is actually trying to address is trying to, as its mission and a vision statement states, that they are actually want to create a universal banking infrastructure, right? So approximately, there are over 1.7 billion people all around the world, which is about 31% of the global population who have a bank account, right? So fortunately for India, right, such advanced and hard steps such as demonetization or has actually, and with new COVID coming in, has actually pushed the need for more and more digital bank accounts, and India has actually established an amazing banking infrastructure, not only in terms of opening bank accounts but also managing it. And similarly, even in the UK, right, to have an open banking system, so anyone could just use all the APIs available and create their application to solve specific problems. So UK and India, I would say, are two countries all around the world which is actually way ahead in terms of banking, and I think we have solved the unbanked population to a lot of extent. But this problem statement is more valid in economies like Africa, Venezuela, right, where the value of their money is actually under hyperinflation, right? I mean, it would just deflate like crazily. I mean, inflate like crazily every single day. So meaning you would at some point of time, I mean, you actually need to spend like billions and billions of Zimbabwe dollars just to get some eggs and breads and all of that. So these are the scenarios where actually like even people, whatever they are earning today is actually absolutely irrelevant to tomorrow, because your money is absolutely falls into the prey of inflation. So Libra is actually addressing to those kinds of people by creating a basket of currencies. So everybody could just have access to the Libra token or a Libra cryptocurrency just with an internet and a smartphone, right? So the other problem statement which Libra is trying to address is transfers, which are actually slow and cost are high. So if you have to move money from India to any part of the world, or even if you have to receive money, right, because of a lot of complex system, it's a bit of a challenge for a person to actually send and receive money, and that's why we rely on middlemen like Swift, which would actually is quite expensive, and people would end up spending 5 to 7% to actually remit the money, the cents to send and receive the money, which is actually quite high. So imagine, every single day world moves around over $3.5 trillion, and imagine just paying probably just even a 2% of it. It's just like you're actually paying billions and billions of dollars as a commission to multiple stakeholders just to move your own money, right? And this was the problem with Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency actually tried to solve, right? And then, but there are certain issues with Bitcoin because it's actually a bit volatile and there is no authority who's controlling it. It's absolutely decentralized, right? But Libra is actually quite different because it is backed by pool of different currencies. So Libra is essentially, the way it operates is it has its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, and they have the bank account. So Libra's banking channels and all its banking partners all across the globe would hold money for users, on behalf of users under Libra as an organization, and would manage it. So, which means that Libra is basically backed by the global pool of currencies such as US dollars, Chinese yuan, Swiss francs, GBP, Great British pound, JPY, CNY, and so on and so forth, right? So, which means that the Libra would also be less volatile compared to any other fiat currency. So we have seen recently, because of COVID, right, US dollars has actually spiked up around 6 to 7% against the rupee in just a single month. So meaning your rupee, his value of your rupee is actually depreciated by 6 to 7%, which is actually quite strange, right? So these are some of the problems with Libra is actually trying to address. And also not only US businesses, but a lot of other businesses all around the world, they lose actually over billions and billions of dollars, right, as a result of actually theft, like cash theft. And still today, 85% of the global transactions also happens in cash. And most important thing is that the people who don't have access to the bank accounts, right, they would actually pay premium just to access their own money. And Libra believes that, onboarding this, 1.7 billion people could actually add over $3.7 trillion in GDP contribution and could create 97 potential million jobs. And most importantly, it would improve people's income by 20% and reduce poverty by 22%. So there are various different factors on how the people's income would actually improve based on a fact that people's dependency or people's dependency in these countries like Peninsula, Africa, Zimbabwe, where they're actually relied on their fiat money, which practically has no value, and adopting Libra or Libra as a platform would, no more, they would be more exposed to a global universal money, right, which is less volatile, which is actually backed by the trust of big banks, all the fiat currencies, and so on and so forth, right? Hence, Libra believes that they could actually solve this problem and create a better world. Right. So just to take a step back and let's just take how actually what different forms of money actually we went through this entire civilization, right? So thousands of years ago, right before PCs, we used to actually use a barter system of money. So one of the biggest challenges with barter system was that, right? I mean, let's say if I have to exchange cattle and rice, I mean, it was very difficult. So if I have to probably exchange like 1,000, kilograms of rice for like 100 cattle, it was quite difficult. I have to carry or put in so much of effort. It was not at all portable. It was not at all divisible, and it was actually perishable. So this system of money was absolutely unreliable because this form or this system of money would have different values for every different individual, right? And then as the society progressed, there was actually a need for a form of money which was actually less stable, which was actually valuable, and most importantly, which was actually also portable, right? Hence, the coins were started to made out of gold and silver because gold and silver was kind of a uniform. It would hold almost same or the equal value all around the world. And then with gold form of money, with Bretton Woods systems and all of that, right? We actually moved to a fiat system of money where the money is completely backed by the government's trust, and which is actually quite bizarre, right? Because in this system of money, the government has the right to print the money or to control the system as they and when want, rather than naturally economy kind of taking its shape. Though it's very important because debt creation is also important for the growth of the society, but excess debt creation could lead to situations like the financial crisis of 2008 and also the kind of recession which actually we are seeing, right? Hence, the money or a paper form of money is actually not at all kind of backed by the gold or something like that. And then with more advancement in the technology and in the computer age, we actually move towards purely a digital form of money or digital era, which we actually call a digital banking. And then credit card was invented, which actually revolutionized the entire payment system. And with PayPal online, it was the first time in history where people was actually send and able to receive money directly, right? And then with blockchain, we are actually reducing all our dependencies from the banks and from the third parties and all of that. Hence, blockchain would actually take over all the different forms of money, and we are seeing a lot of amazing things happening where United States Fed, economies like China, even the European Central Bank, ECB, is actually now looking forward to roll out their own currency on a blockchain, which is a cryptocurrency, right? So we are going to see a world where, this system of money is actually, and the business models and the landscape is actually totally changing its shape, form, and most importantly, the business model, right? the amount of disruption we are talking about is going to be, tremendous. And blockchain is there to actually drive this change, right? Hence, these are quick, stats or quick advantages of Libra, right? So, moving around money around with is like should be as cheap as sending a text message. So Libra, though it started by Facebook, right? But if you go to the website and check out, it operates as a non-profit organization with having its own governance structures in place. So we're going to cover a bit about its governance structure in the coming slides, right? But for now, right, Libra is purely mobile, meaning there's not going to be a physical Libra branch where you actually you need to go and operate your money. It's going to be purely digital. It's going to leverage the Facebook's ecosystem, and the wallet's going to be integrated within the Facebook system, right? Now, also it is stable and fast. So as I've been telling initially, that Libra is actually backed by a reserve of different assets in different ratios. So it is pegged to a lot of different pool of fiat currencies, also some precious metals like golds and silvers, and also some government bonds and debts. So the whole objective is that the world needs the universal global currency, which is absolutely stable. And the transactions on Libra is like instant and real time. So one could just send rupee to dollar, rupee to dollar to rupee, and any of that instant in real time. And Libra is designed for the world, which is an absolutely an open source form of money. It is highly scalable. So Libra, is going to roll out a lot of their developers kit and API, so any other applications or people could actually innovate on the top of Libra. And most importantly, using blockchain, it is actually designed by default security. So this is what a nutshell from technical perspective about Libra is, that it's BFT based. So BFT is kind of an consensus for blockchain. It's Byzantine fault tolerance. So which means it is going to solve a problem of double spending. So by double spending, what I actually mean is that, let's say Prashant has $100 and he wishes to send $100 to Abhishek, right? In a traditional scenario where I gave an example where fake letter of credits being issued and transaction frauds and all of that, that is because every single time whenever a transaction is happening, that is not rechecking the balances again from the trail itself, or from the source itself, or from the transaction zero itself, or from the first transaction, right? So in this mechanism, what actually happening is that, let's say Prashant has $100, Prashant sent $50 to Abhishek. So which means Abhishek received $50 from Prashant, and Prashant is only left with a balance of 50. So if Prashant would want to send $51 again, the system would deny it. Why the system would deny it? Because of a fact that Prashant don't comply with the checks and balances in place. And if I have to do the similar thing in a traditional scenario, we would rely on systems like Swift or all other different partners to actually build or bridge this trust. And even in this scenario, double spending is possible, right? For an example, sometimes we come towards an issue where, let's say, if I have to spend $100 from our credit card, right? We see that we actually the transaction has done twice or 2 times or 3 times, right? Because of a lot of technical challenges, and because of a lot of third party and middlemen involved in this process. So with blockchain, we will actually able to solve this problem of double spending, because every single time whenever transaction would go through among multiple parties, the entire system is going to check for checks and balances in place for everyone across the network. The other thing is that it is based on proof of stake. So in blockchain, right, there are multiple what I would say consensus mechanisms like Bitcoin's proof of work, Ethereum proof of work, and then you have proof of stake, and then you have delegated proof of stake, and then you have proof of elapsed time, right? But Libra is based on proof of stake. So meaning persons who are actually verifying the transactions, whom we call basically miners, right, is going to put their skin into the game, meaning that they have to stake their own money in order to become a miner on the Libra blockchain and to earn a certain percentage of fee whenever a transaction actually goes through, right? So which proof of stake, what essentially the network is actually doing is that, or one of the key advantages is that the people, if a person is found to do any kind of fraud transaction or trying to cheat the network, right, he would be actually kicked out of the network. A lot of penalty would be imposed, and also the person would be probably banned, meaning a person would not be able to earn that revenue again, right? So this is one of the key advantages, and also the person is actually getting more skin into the game, right? Because a person, rather than taking the money out of the system, would actually like to invest more and more, because the more the money the person stakes into the system, the higher the chances or of a person actually getting the transaction fee, right? So this is one of the key advantage. And a lot of us believe, and there are certain challenges with Bitcoins and Ethereum in terms of scalability. Hence, Libra actually uses Merkle tree, stake, channel, and actually sharding. So sharding is actually a process where you would define, or where you do actually break down multiple transactions into small bits and pieces, and you do kind of, sidechain transactions. So this is a bit technical, right? But we will go into all of these, in more in-depth session, right? So Libra is also invented their own programming language, which is Move. So like you have Golang, Node, JS, JavaScript, C, C++. Libra actually operates on its own programming language, which is Move. So Move is essentially the combination of Golang plus JavaScript, right? And most importantly, all the transactions on Libra blockchain, what they claim is irreversible. So meaning if I do a transaction from A to B and the transaction is successful and comes confirmed by the block, there is no way I could reverse it unless and until a person would agree to that. So this is a quick difference, as I told you, between proof of stake consensus and proof of work. So in proof of work, basically a miner need to verify each block before it's added. So think of proof of work as if that it is like a process of mining gold on an internet. So in a computer scenario, mining is purely based on cryptography, purely based on algorithms. So you would actually do a lot of computational calculations in order to actually verify the transaction, which is actually very, very power intensive, which is very actually heavy in terms of resources. Whereas in proof of stake, right, it is actually purely based, or who would actually verify the transaction based on the stake onto the system. Also, proof of work is prone to 51% attack. So, for example, if there are 100 miners or 100 nodes, which is actually, operating a system or operating this network, right, they would actually 51% person or a 51% node would need to come together in order to kind of hack the network down. But with Bitcoin and Ethereum, it is almost impossible because no one would want to cheat these things. But the chances of 51% attack is quite low. But still, it would increase as the network is compromisable. Whereas in proof of stake, a person needs to own a 51% of the entire cryptocurrency onto the network to actually do the attack, right? Whereas in proof of work, there is more incentive for the miner because the miner is actually investing more resources. Whereas in proof of stake, the incentives or the transaction fees is actually quite less. So we just a person would just not only would just get a transaction fee. Whereas in proof of work, you are not only awarded with a transaction fee, but also you are awarded with certain Bitcoin, which is actually distributed to the people in terms of contribution, whatever they do. But this is a quick comparison. There could be a lot of several doubts around this. So let's have a quick Q&A before we kind of go more further on this. So any doubts and questions so far? You could just raise your hand and I could just probably unmute you guys and we can just have Q&A. Okay, so there's a question by Siddhartha, that is Libra backed by the assets. Yes, Siddhartha. So Libra is actually, as I told you, is backed by a bunch of assets, right? So these assets could essentially involve gold, silver, a basket of fiat currencies like pounds, euros, dollars, and so on and so forth. So any other questions? If not, then I think I'm assuming that we are good to go, and I'll just move further on this. Okay, so this is the key fundamental belief that why Facebook or why Libra believes that there is a need for Libra, right? So as I told you, every person should have access to the financial services and to cheap capital, right? With Libra, you could actually think of a world where you could get loans at the most cooperative price possible, right? Say for example, right? I mean, if let's say getting a loan in India would cost a person average from 8 to 12, 15, and even 20%, right? Whereas the cost of capital in countries like US or Japan is almost negligible. So you could just get money as low as just even 0.5% or even a 1% interest rate. So with more global financial infrastructure, you could have the most cheap access to the capital. Also believes that Libra believe that people have the right to control their fruit of their labor, meaning we don't have to pay any more transaction fee to all these middlemen. Also, it wants to create an open, universal, instant financial infrastructure which would create immense economic opportunity and make more commerce around the world. So if we look at every single time, with more technological evolution, the trade and commerce all around the world has actually increased very drastically. And with the same thing, Libra has put this same thoughts forward across all the business leaders around the world, even in G20 summit recently, that with Libra it would actually start a beginning of a global financial revolution. And also, this is more of a decentralized form of governance, right? I mean, today, if you look at the structure of entire fiat money, right, it's controlled by the Fed, it's controlled by the Reserve Bank in India, Royal Bank in London, right? So people are actually bound by whatever the decisions they take. So these decisions could not be favorable. I mean, they could be multiple scenarios. But since Libra is actually governed by multiple stakeholders all around the world, and keeping in mind with a vision that financial infrastructure has to actually go more global, right? So it's going to be decentralized. So meaning a person holding irrespective of the percentage of the stake or irrespective of a money, every node would have a valid say or a valid vote in the governance of Libra ecosystem. Hence, it could be also think that this could be as governed as a public good, and this would advance financial inclusion, support more ethical actors, and also uphold the integrity of the system. So this is quick about Libra, and this is how a transaction would flow in Libra, right? So if any person would act, so these are the few parameters which is actually included in every single block. So most of them are of course integers, because we are actually only talking about moving money, right? So moving money could only be most in terms of in like numbers like 1, 0, 1, 2, 3.012, so on and so forth, right? And so the most important terminology which we have to actually address here is the node time. So this is absolutely a timestamp kind of a scenario, where if every transaction which will go into the system will be time stamped. So meaning if a person sends money from India to the US in a traditional scenario, you wouldn't be able to track where your money is lying at which particular point of time. And there's always a transparency issue, right? A bank could say that, okay, I have initiated the transaction, but a SWIFT could say, no, I mean, I didn't receive this, right? And so hence, it would actually avoid all this, because every participant is connected to a one common ecosystem or to one common network, and they would access the one uniform time all around it. So all the transactions going into the system is time stamped. Also, as I told you, like, block hashing is a process where we are actually trying to encrypt the data whenever it goes into the system, right? And this is just to make sure that only authorized or the respective parties can have access to the data. Also, is that there is an author. So author could be the sender or a receiver, or also the block validator, right, in an ecosystem. So basically, they are part of a consensus. So consensus, as I told you, is a set of rules and regulations which on how the network should actually operate. And a signature. So your signature is a digital signature just to verify that the transactions has been initiated by the respective parties. So now coming to your question, right? I mean, what Libra is actually backed? I mean, what assets is backed, right? So Libra is actually backed by stable coins, backed by currency baskets. So it could also be backed by government bonds index. That's what their website says. So which would have low volatility, and you could actually buy, as per their white paper currently, Libra would be listed on a lot of different, not only crypto exchanges, but a lot of other traditional stock market indexes, and all the participants, like all the parties in the Libra ecosystem, which includes a lot of banks, which includes a lot of e-commerce players and all of that, you would be also able to buy Libra from them. So hence, this is a nutshell summary of Libra, right? It's like open source, scalable, and stable. So this is Libra's ecosystem, right? As I told you, it has all the participants, right, from e-commerce such as eBay to payment processors like PayPal, Stripe, venture capital firm, big telecom agencies, and all of that, even Mastercard. But recently, there has been issue with Libra because a lot of government and a lot of organizations actually feel threat because this could actually take over their entire business or would create a scenario where there is more decentralization. So these are the quick response. So Libra, as I told you, operates as in more of a non-government organization. So it has a governance board which would actually operate, or its partners would actually be responsible for maintaining the Libra ecosystem. So in terms of it actually has, so the major responsibilities of all partners is kind of having a uniform governance structure, implementation, and strategy. So by governance, as I told you, that they're going to be governed by a fixed set of consensus, right? So members of the association would also participate in key decision making in terms of the development of the Libra blockchain, its management, its reserve, and also its impact and its responsibilities towards the society. Also, they would be responsible for the implementation, right? Implementation in terms of not only technological implementation by being a node validator, but also an implementer on how they would actually expand the Libra ecosystem and also the securing the Libra blockchain. And also the strategy, right? So how this network should operate and what should be the growth metrics of this. So Facebook's contribution in terms of Libra is that Facebook has the sole monopoly of its digital wallet, which it's called Calibra. So Facebook is one of the original founders of Libra blockchain, but along with it, there are lots of other different founders. But Facebook's key contribution is Calibra. So Calibra would act more as a Libra wallet or more as a crypto currency wallet, right? It would be actually be integrated as part of Facebook's ecosystem into Instagrams, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and so on and so forth. So, as per the screens recently released by Libra, you could see how easy it's to move basically money, right? So, okay. So there is one quick question, right? Is whether Libra. Okay, sorry, just let me share my screen again. Okay. So is whether Libra is a permission blockchain or a permissionless blockchain, right? So there are essentially two different kinds of blockchain. So one is a private blockchain and one is a public blockchain. So public blockchain is something like Bitcoin or an Ethereum, where any participant just having a computer and an internet could actually become a miner or a transaction validator, which we also called a node validator. Whereas in terms of private blockchain, the miners would be actually elected. So in this scenario, right, all the participants who are actually the members of Libra will actually be the node validator for doing the transaction. And also, you might think what it takes to become a member in Libra ecosystem, right? So to be a part of a Libra ecosystem, you actually need to have, so that's certain criteria, right? But for few quick idea, which I know from my understanding by exploring Libra, is that you have to be a company which is at least worth $1 billion, or a company which is processing at over $5 billion in transactions, or a company which is actually managing multi-billion dollars of users' balances and assets. So which means that though Libra says it is decentralized, right? It is still pretty much available only for the large entities and large corporations. So this is a quick conclusion on Libra, right? I mean, it's questions on decentralization. So as I told you, from my perspective, I would not call Libra exactly as more decentralized, which they claim to be. I would say Libra is more centralized because the governance of Libra is only lies with only few influential or powerful people, right? Because no Tom, Dick, and Harry could actually become a node validator on Libra blockchain. Hence, they could take any decision which is actually in interest of their foundation or their organization. unlike Bitcoin or Ethereum. And of course, there is a lot of regulatory and privacy challenges, right? So personally, I wouldn't trust Facebook or any of these organizations when they talk about decentralization, because Facebook's been constantly and gradually been in the news of manipulating and using users' data, breaching their privacy, so on, so forth. And also, most importantly, it is of course a threat to the existing financial system, such as large banks and so on. So probably if Libra comes into picture, right, we could see a massive protest, which has already happened all around the world with a lot of different governments and different institutions, opposing the existence of Libra. Hence, Libra could be a whole new level of disruption in today's financial infrastructure. So, thank you so much, guys. So, if you just want to know more about Libra, right, you could actually visit Libra's website. And also, if you want to, or if you're looking forward to explore blockchain as your career options, right? So we offer specialized, dedicated programs across blockchain admin, blockchain architecture, developer, and if you're looking forward for building your career in blockchain, you could go to our website, explore our website. You could reach out to us, and we'll be happy to schedule a free counseling session for you. So our whole objective with IBI is it's kind of a non-profit kind of an organization. It's a sister concern of Snap Future Tech, which is our leading enterprise blockchain company. And the whole idea with Indian Blockchain Institute is to create a network or a community of skilled blockchain individuals, right? Like internet revolution, we believe that with more skills and more opportunities, blockchain revolution would also take a massive space, and we want to be one of the contributors to that. So we are actually doing one amazing weekend program, which is just cost like $4 or $240, which is coming this weekend. So this is a 2-day workshop which would cover a lot of basic concepts about blockchain, technically how it works, what is a block, what is mining, and why do we need it, and also followed by a lot of use cases. So it's purely a live instructor-led program. You would get a lot of opportunity to learn about blockchain at a very fundamental level, and that would actually give you more clarity on whatever we spoke or whatever I discussed today, and kind of connect it. Also, you could follow our website, snapabus.com, for a lot of blockchain news analysis. You can also connect me on LinkedIn, PRASHANT SURANA JAIN, and I also keep on writing some quite amazing stuff on why India is ready for the biggest blockchain boom, how blockchain could potentially change the whole internet, and all of that. So you could also read there and give me your own feedback. So in case if you want to connect with me, you can also connect up or drop me an email on prashant.surana @snapperfuturetech.com, and I'll be happy to connect. So any question and answers, guys, so far? So you could just, probably just unmute yourself and just probably talk or raise your hand. So if you have also any doubts or any queries about, building your career, particularly even in the blockchain space, or if you have any other doubts or any other queries, I would be also happy to answer that. Okay, so I'm assuming this webinar went quite well, and there is no such questions and answers. Okay, so there's one question. Is Libra okay? So Abhishek ji, actually Libra is not an ERC20 token or a protocol. It's not actually built on Ethereum. So Libra is essentially rolling out its own token with its own blockchain, which is called the Libra Blockchain. Hence, it's actually independent and does not operate any of these protocols like Ethereum, Litecoin, or Bitcoin protocol. It's absolutely independent blockchain. Though, of course, they have taken a lot of inspirations from these blockchain, because these blockchains are almost made open source, but they have not actually used ERC22. So any other doubts or queries? Okay, thanks. Okay, guys, so I would be signing off. If you're interested, you can just connect with me, drop me an email, or connect me up on LinkedIn by searching Prashant Surana Jain. And also you could reach out to our team at IBI, and we'll be glad to help anything related to blockchain. So thank you so much, guys, for taking out the time. It was really wonderful to connect with you up, and look forward to kind of see you this weekend. If you're interested, you could just sign it up. It just costs 240 rupees or just $3, right? So you could just sign up for that. Okay, so thank you so much, guys. Take care. Good night, and have a good week ahead. Stay safe. This is being something which is very astonishing to me, that as per several studies and reports, only 5 to 10% of the people are actually employable. By that, what I mean is that only 5 to 10% of the working class or the working people have the right skill set to be employed. And this is one of the major hindrances leading to unemployability. And the only way to overcome is upskill yourself. With rising competition, upskilling has become one of the key priorities. And understanding this fact, IBI has come up with an exclusive program for the students, which we call it Blockchain plus Internship Program. So this Blockchain plus Internship Program will help you to learn in depth about blockchain technology, working on several projects, creating decentralized applications, along with an internship in Snapper Future Tech. So in this entire program, you're going to learn the entire product lifecycle development, what goes into enterprise grade applications and solutions and production. And this program is basically for students. This is about 2 to 3 months program, and it is a live instructor-led program. So any person from around the world can participate in this program, can sign up, and will also get an internship appointment letter with Snapper Future Tech. So you're going to work with the industry-leading faculties. You're going to get a lot of mentorship during the program, and also get a lot of hands-on experience to learn about creating your own product. So even if you're looking forward to be an entrepreneur, this is the right program for you, because you know what goes into the product development, what is the thought process, what kind of business model you should think about, and most importantly, how is the product lifecycle development. You need to always hear your customers out. So this program is exclusively aimed at students, primarily freshers who are looking forward to land their dream job and build their career in the technology space. So blockchain is one of the most paid skills in demand. It's the number one skill in demand. It's the best time to learn blockchain. And this is only one of a kind industry program which will help you not only learn, but also get internship. So at the end of the program, you're going to be evaluated by your faculties and get an internship letter from Snapper Future Tech, which is one of the leading enterprise blockchain companies. So this program will cover Ethereum, Hyperledger, and also internships. So you're going to learn a lot about Ethereum, which is a public blockchain, Solidity, how to create decentralized application, create your own tokens, write your own smart contracts, along with Hyperledger ecosystem and how to create create a network. You are going to learn about Golang, Kubernetes, Dockers, and so on and so forth. So this is really exciting program. This program is exclusively for you. So please sign up, as we have limited seats available for this. Thank you so much and have a good day.